left controlling media is moving uninformed Americans toward their socialist outcries. In the last few days, most news outlets were inundated with untruths, faux rationales from deviant Democratic politicians, more concerned with developing their own voting base than their own country. When you have no borders, you have no country. It's shameful, and the political right sees through the uninformed, useful fools of the American left. Clear-thinking individuals see the foolish disinformation coming from the left-leaning media and know that liberals have not thought it all the way through. Their goal is to destroy America, liberalize what socialism is going to be for them, and what they don't see is obvious consumption towards a third world country after they're all done. And I have with me to handle this topic David Ziers, radio talk show host. He's also a political commentator for I-24 News, which is Israeli international news, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, so what do you think of that opening before I do any more questioning?
I can't say I disagreed with much. I just think that people have a different version of what America should be. Yeah. And I think we've lost our way, and we've lost our ethic. And the rugged individualism that made this country great is fleeting. And when my great-grandparents came here in the late 1800s and early 1900s, they assimilated, they learned the language, they didn't get any public benefits, and no one went to prison. And now we have 50% of the federal prosecutions in federal criminal court are for illegal aliens, and 1/5 of our prison population is filled with illegal aliens, and we spend $1.5 million a day on it of taxpayer money alone just for that, not including $100 billion a year in emergency room visits where illegals are using them as their general care physicians. So we have problems. And a guy like me who owns a small business on Long Island, I'm in building and construction for 30 years.
So you're concerned.
And I'm a broker for 30 years. I'm paying $45,000 a year for a family independent health plan so everyone can live at home and smoke weed in their parents' basement or be an illegal alien abusing the system or be from Brighton Beach and commit Medicaid fraud, which is probably $2 billion a year alone just in New York State.
I heard recently there's some number that just came up in the news of not welfare, the food stamps have finally gone down.
They've fallen significantly, yeah, and food stamps doubled under Obama as well. Yeah. They were pushing it. They're pushing the cell phones. They're pushing the Obama phones. I remember, they used to walk around to my business and knock on the door. If you make $37,000 a year, you get a free cell phone.
Should have said yes.
It was all about the entitlements. It's what it's all about. And again, the vision is different. And as Barack Obama said in his book, Dreams from My Father, before he was president, it was crystal clear what he intended to do when he was president. He wrote that the white man's need rules the white man's greed rules the black man's need. Right. And it kind of is what drove him. He was an anti-colonialist. His father fought the British in Kenya. And, Obama's own brother in Kenya, didn't agree with Obama on that. He said the British were good when they interviewed him. When Dinesh D'Souza interviewed him, he said the British brought running water and electricity to Africa, and he was glad for it. But anyway.
Meanwhile, he didn't have experience himself, and he got to be president, so he should be thankful for that.
Well, he came out of obscurity, came out of nowhere. So, the question is, how did Obama, not to get off the topic of illegal immigration, but why did he travel to Pakistan in 1980, 81, when he was a college student when nobody really was allowed to do that? I think there were big forces at work with Obama since the beginning, and he had a rise to fame and fortune very young. He never showed up for his job.
I hope he's not out of the woods yet. I hope there's a way to get the
he never showed up.
They need.
They called him the ghost professor at University of Chicago. Nobody ever even saw him there, and he got a fellowship to teach. It's amazing how this guy got so far so quickly. So I think there's a bigger story there. But anyway, not to get off topic.
Does the sound of Manchurian Candidate come to your ear in any way?
I just think that there's an agenda on the left where, right now, like this story with the illegal aliens and the child separation, which they do in Canada, by the way, which Obama did to 200,000 families from 2012 to 2016. It was never a big deal. As soon as the IG report comes out from Horowitz, all the cannons turn automatically to this issue. All of a sudden, it's a crisis and an emergency. So it's a collaborated effort. There's no doubt.
Yeah, there's no question. The separation of the children and families was someplace I wanted to go, and you just touched on it now. But
yes.
We as Americans, there's certain separation of our own kids, like from custody disputes and from jail and a whole bunch of other reasons. And how about abortion? We should really throw that in.
Well, they don't want to talk about that. But, in America, if I get in my car drunk and I have a child with me and I slam into a car and I get arrested, I lose my children. They get separated at the arrest. So what's the difference between a family crossing the border? And all these images of these cages are really just steel fencing that they put into place for the temporary processing centers, the same ones that Obama used for many, many years. And the reason they used the steel cages was because it would take 5 times the amount of the personnel to monitor if they were in enclosed units and rooms.
Sure.
And it's a temporary holding facility.
I heard there were 8,000 or 10,000. Was it the 8,000 of the 10,000 immigrants that recently came over without
10,000
parents. They
of
weren't
the
their natural
12,000.
parents. 10 of 12. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Come over.
So,
without.
so under Obama from 2012 to 2016, which the New York Times comes out with after the executive orders passed by Trump, they leave that out conveniently. Out of the 200,000 families that were involved in this, it's impossible to parse which families were unaccompanied minors or came here and were separated, through arrests. Right. And if you come here through ports of entry into this country, legal ports of entry, and you claim political asylum, you don't lose your children. You don't get separated.
And this is part of what they had asked for today, am I right? Isn't this part of the new executive order? Come through the port of entry. I think it's, I don't know if we've heard about it yet, but I'm sure that was mentioned.
I read it. I read and I heard Trump's speech on it. Listen, the guy's using it as a political wedge, I believe, to get a fence and to get the wall done. I think he's giving in on this issue. I think he's sensitive to it, but I think he's very smart. And now what are they going to use as an excuse? Before he said, let's
They'll
legalize.
Come up with something.
Well, they said he said to them, let's legalize 3.5 million DACA kids and their families. So how could the Democrats say no to that? Because they want 12 million to become citizens to vote for them, or not to become citizens and still be able to vote for them.
The voting block is the bigger issue behind the scenes, am I right?
It's a huge issue, and like in states like California, you can vote as an illegal alien in statewide elections.
I don't see how they can separate the state.
It's unreal what's going on.
Yeah.
They have illegal aliens as monitors sometimes in the polling stations in California, in the local races.
Wow.
It's really disgusting.
I didn't know that
and
either.
People forget about the angel families. All the families of victims of illegal aliens. Last night, yesterday in Florida, a Guatemalan national illegal immigrant was arrested. He threw a body out of a car, maybe a prostitute, and maybe killed another woman. And day after day, you hear these heartbreaking stories of a child being raped. A 6-year-old girl was on a lawn in California and a car came up on it, and the guy was 3 times the legal limit. He was deported twice. A 14-year-old girl was raped in Portland, Oregon, multiple times, and the guy was deported twice.
Steinle and et cetera.
Katie Steinle, and then this guy, put this kid injured this kid in a woman's car. He was deported 15 times. Before. And I have case after case here. I got piles of cases here, of illegal aliens murdering and killing American citizens.
Documented stories.
And in Texas alone, from 2011 to 2018, there were over 663,000 crimes committed by 240,000 illegal aliens just in the state of Texas, including 1,500 murders. And listen to this. You ready for this one?
I'm ready.
1,600 criminal homicide warrants are out in LA County. 95% of them are for illegal aliens.
I'm going to have to keep this show to remember because you have some statistics here.
30% of all the murders in the big states in the United States are committed by illegal aliens. It's just, the numbers are so unbelievable.
The numbers of people seeking asylum are 27% increase over last year. This is already, then we're now halfway through 2018.
It's an epidemic, and the problem is the president of Mexico is in bed with the cartels. One of his chief aides was involved in cremating hundreds of bodies that the cartel killed in the states in Mexico. We have a very serious problem here, and they should declare political asylum in Mexico, but the dirty little secret is that 1/4 to 1/3 of the Mexican economy is American illegal aliens in America sending money home to their families.
Yeah, geez.
So
oh my God,
they say 10%, but I heard numbers today that were 25 to 33% reliant on the American cash coming back. So I say, I don't know why Trump didn't propose a tax on Western unions back to Central American countries to build the wall. He'd get about $10 billion a year.
2/3 of all the refugees in the world come through the southern border since 1975.
Yeah.
And they're not doing it legally. So can we effectually create a legal system based on what we know right now?
Well, listen, Trump's the only one really addressing it. And Ronald Reagan, as much as we love him, he gave amnesty to a lot of people, 800,000 or so, and it's just a vicious cycle. It just keeps going that way. And now with the sanctuary city policy, where you have whole governments, and in California they're protesting. You got 35 cities and counties that have joined a lawsuit against.
Thank
the state.
goodness. I mean,
Thank God.
I hope this really goes. Yeah.
But Trump's behind it because it's his willingness to stand up and say, listen, I'm not allegiant to anybody. I was a lifelong Republican. I left the Republican Party. I raised $500,000 for the Republicans in my life, and I left because I didn't see much of a difference between the parties. I've always been a philosophical conservative, so I changed.
You're a populist now.
Yeah, and I kind of think that's the way to go. Listen, I have fundraisers for Republicans still. I support most of the agenda. But when the Long Island state senators voted for the minimum wage increase, and when they voted against for the SAFE Act again for the second time to renew it, I was saying to myself, what's the difference? Where is my representation as a taxpayer, and who's fighting for us?
Well, too many people are getting things that we don't know about under the table or behind the scenes, and I hate to say that, but
it's an issue for a whole other show. About
right.
that New York State has 800 public-private authorities, and none of them are allowed to be audited. So you've got the MTA, you've got the Port Authority, you've got all these groups, and they're not allowed to be audited, and there's billions in waste.
And the schools have been taking more. There's a whole bunch of things
it's
going
crazy.
on. They've been taking more money than they should take.
And we pay 25% to Albany, and we get 13% back. Nassau and Suffolk County is probably the 30th largest economy in the world. And then we get the MTA tax thrown on us years ago, and we're funding, the city. So there's a lot of inequities going on. And just to add on to it, I'm friends. I used to belong to the El Salvadoran, the Peruvian, and the Colombian Chambers of Commerce in Brentwood. And, I've been active with business owners over there. And they were thrilled when Trump was coming in there cleaning up MS-13. My friends own restaurants in Brentwood, and they're El Salvadoran. And these MS-13 guys were putting their businesses in jeopardy. And I did 31 episodes of Long Island Talks Trump on the air last year, debating like 3 or 4 liberals at a time, including the staff, stuff, and they didn't want to hear it. And they never aired what I said about the business owners in Brentwood and Huntington Station supporting these operations with the feds coming in after dark and solving these problems. I'm in the trade parade every day. I build in Bridgehampton, and it takes me 2.5 hours to get from Port Jefferson to Bridgehampton, 50 miles. And the roads are jam-packed, filled with 7 to 8 mile traffic jam of illegal aliens. And it would be great if they obeyed the law, and it would be great if they were all friendly and polite. But you know what the reality is? Nobody has a driver's license, nobody has legal insurance, and nobody has real plates on their car. Anytime you see a Virginia plate or an Oklahoma plate or a Florida plate, it's all fake. It's all fake. And and they don't follow the rules on the road.
This is like living in the wild, wild west.
I feel like I live in Guatemala. And it's a third world. This country has headed toward third worldism for the past 30, 40 years. That's why I
mentioned that in my opening.
And I think Trump's willing to stand up and say, if you come to this country, you have to have a value-added status. And if you're a refugee and you really have political asylum, we're going to let you in here after your detention hearing. But just to come up and send your kid, these little kids are getting raped coming up here. Kids are getting raped coming up here. And when Trump says that some of the people...
on the way,
it's a terrible situation. Look at this car crash the other day. They were outrunning the cops in a county in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
An SUV filled with 12 illegal aliens. 5 of them are dead. They were doing over 100 miles an hour.
Why would they be getting away, right? They're trying to get away from being apprehended, being taken in. Let's talk a little bit about the sanctuary cities. What value do we have? We know we can get rid of them. We know it's the best thing that we can do is stop them. I'm glad that Trump is standing up for them as well. Yeah. But how do you stop them? How does he stop them?
I think we're in the initial stages of a civil war, and it's civil right now. I don't know where it goes from here. I'm not very confident that I have 3 children done with college, and the nonsense that they learned in college is really teased me off. And I think that this is the line in the sand has been drawn by the left. I was at the inauguration for Trump, and like 50 demonstrators came down the street dressed like Hamas with sticks, and they were smashing skyscraper windows and storefronts, and the cops weren't even arresting them. They were paid agitators. I've been to 100 rallies in D.C. and
Supposedly
CPAC.
There was Soros back, am I correct?
Well, some of them are. I've been to so many events. I had a guy beat up and put into a coma in front of me at an event that was at a conservative event, and we were just peaceful. We we had this beautiful dinner with Gavin McInnes from Vice Media and Mike Cernovich, conservative talk show host, and all these great personalities and media hosts and everything. And we had this incredible dinner. We walked outside, and then Antifa attacked everybody. Put a guy in a coma. I had to be escorted to my car, because I was being told that I brought...
They're supposed to be a nonviolent group.
I was told Black Lives Matter showed up, and they were yelling at me that I'm responsible for bringing rabies and syphilis to America.
They're all source-funded, I heard. Black Lives
Some
Matter.
of them are, and some of it's part of the Islamic movement, too. They call it the watermelon. So it's green on the outside and red in the middle. You have Hamas and Sunni Islam, the ends of that religion that want to restore the caliphate and promote Sharia law in the United States on the outside, which is Linda Sarsour, say, from the Women's March, who is a pro-Sharia law advocate. Meanwhile, in Sharia law countries, you can't even go to soccer games when you're a woman. So who the hell is she to stand up for women's rights when you got people like my mother, who struggled her whole life, made it herself in business, got kicked while she was down, didn't need a women's movement to make her successful. But my whole point was...
She's an effective speaker. She's a useful fool.
Yeah, it's great. But Linda Sarsour is merged with these Marxist...
Linda Sarsour, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she's...
crossed it over with your mother.
Well, she's like Linda Sarsour, they're merged with the progressive liberal movement in the United States that's pro-communist, pro-socialistic, and it joins with Black Lives Matter. It's all related.
Sure.
It's all related, and it's being pushed by the agenda.
It's been infiltrated in our government for quite a while.
Well, it is, and it got really bad under Obama. It started with Bush a little bit, and I was a Bush fan. I lost my best friends in 9/11, but there's a lot of things I didn't like. And one of the things is that we scrubbed the vernacular out of all our military documents, and we stopped calling terrorism the war on terror. We changed the name of it to Overseas Contingencies Operations, and you weren't allowed to use under McMaster in the Trump administration. I had Rich Higgins on my show from the National Security Council, and I was with him at the Hannity show last year. When I brought a friend to host the Hannity show. And Rich Higgins, was fired by McMaster for writing this report on the watermelon, and you weren't even allowed to use the term Muslim Brotherhood around McMaster, or you were canned. So there was this effort, and that's why Trump got rid of him. McMaster wasn't Trump's first choice. He was his third choice for National Security Director. And I was told by Rich Higgins that Rex Tillerson, even Mattis, and McMaster have had Trump under house arrest on foreign policy, and they didn't want him to be too hard on Islamic terror because they wanted the JCPOA deal to go through because there was so much money involved. And if you notice, Tillerson and what's his name is gone already. McMaster's gone. I think Trump's been able to get a little bit of a handle on it, and he brought in Fred Fleitz from the Center for Security Policy along with John Bolton, which was a great pick.
Bolton's the great pick. The left keeps saying that all these transitions are horrible, that Trump is losing the credibility with the voters, and that people are going to transfer. The rhinos are going to move out and vote for somebody else.
Yeah, but every time the party, I was a Ted Cruz guy, right? I hosted Heidi Cruz on the island for an event. I was always a Ted Cruz guy. And by the way, his solution is great. He's saying, don't separate the families, but expedite all the hearings. And he has a bill, and a lot of Democrats are coming on board. So the Senate need 60 votes. I don't know if they get it.
Yeah.
But I was going to say that it wasn't until August of 2016, I went out to the Trump-Pence Hannity town hall. I was working as a publicist for trying to get Pastor Darrell Scott, who was head of Trump's National Diversity Coalition. Pastor Darrell Scott's a black pastor in Cleveland, has the 8th highest murder rate. If anyone thinks Trump is a racist, they've got their head way up their butt.
Yeah.
And he's not at all. And when I went out to that rally for the Trump-Pence Hannity town hall, and General Flynn was there, and everybody was there, you could imagine, Ben Carson, everything, and 1,000 black pastors came out from around the country. I knew then that Trump was going to win because he took a hard turn to the right after he got rid of Manafort. Manafort was useless, and he was going back to the old establishment Republican politics, and Trump didn't like it.
I don't know where you get your confidence from. I didn't have that at that time, and I was.
Well, and you know what else helped me? When I flew out there, but I drove back, and when I drove back, every barn in Pennsylvania had a Trump banner on it or a sign on the lawn. And I was like, there's no way he loses Pennsylvania. I was very confident that Trump was going to win.
I should have taken that drive with you. I was worried about Pennsylvania.
Yeah, initially I was. But, my support of Trump evolved, but it evolved to an incredible level now because, he doesn't owe anybody anything. He doesn't take a salary. He donated all his money to the Parks Department for the past 6 quarters. The GDP's coming in at 4.8% maybe next month.
Low unemployment
You
rates
know,
everywhere.
my business is up
Yeah.
50, 60% in a year and a half. The past 10 years were the worst years of our business in 40 years because of the Dodd-Frank Act, which Trump's repealing parts of it.
Right.
So the small and medium-sized bank don't have regulators
Tell that
breathing
to
down
the
their
average
neck.
liberal. You want to tell me something? How do I get across to the average liberal?
They
that
don't
he's done a
know. They have no clue.
Fabulous.
They have no, do
he's
you know
got a
under
fabulous
Obama only
beginning.
3 new banks were created in the whole country in 8 years? 3 new banks. You know, there was no growth. There was no growth. There was little growth. So it wasn't that Obama destroyed the economy. It's that he kept it handcuffed. You know, and
Well,
his
those
policy,
regulations.
you got to remember these administrations are tens of thousands of people. Everybody's got this like liberal left-wing agenda, and then when a Republican gets in, hopefully there's enough conservatives to balance it out. But I think what Trump offers is a pragmatism where he puts them on the spot. He's not afraid of ruining coalitions.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and you know, Reagan was the great communicator and made coalitions. But I think Trump is better than Reagan in some ways. You know?
He is in some ways, but how do you break the rhinos or the people who are established in the Republican Party?
I think he just keeps
who
calling
just
them
say, you know,
out.
I just don't leave, stop messing with us.
I bet if you took a poll on the street of 20 Republicans, 15 of them would hate Paul Ryan. You know, so I think they
I don't
stand
know what
out.
to think about him. Yeah,
You know, he's not a team player. He's not a conservative, that's for sure. Maybe on some issues. Mitch McConnell, you know, he can't get out of his own way, and despite that, we're still making progress. Imagine that, you know, these guys had some couillons.
Yeah.
You know, so it's
You
really.
go like this when you say that. You got
I'm Italian. If you didn't notice by the tan.
The 500,000 in 2013, the 500,000 from southern countries, and MS-13 is apparently getting entrenched in a lot of different areas. Why isn't anybody getting this message that there's not only that the opioid addictions are coming through the southern border? Why isn't how does any country suddenly take on the 50,000 a year that we have and figure out what to do with them? How do we make them legal?
You can't.
You can't.
You
So what do you do?
Well, I think that you know, we're in the next 2 years at least, if Trump does not get reelected, at least in the next 2 years, you're going to see a lot of changes down there. I think the incentive to come here won't be as much. I think we're going to fill some of the jobs. You know, but the problem with America now is we have 1.2 million more jobs than we have people, and you can't get skilled labor because anyone who's 30 and under is just stuck on a tablet since they're 7 years old from
That's right.
Applebee's.
That's right.
You know, and they don't
Yeah.
communicate. They have no
Right.
communication
Now-
skills. They can't count change back to
with
you at the
the,
register, and they don't show up to
Minimum
work.
wage, and the minimum wage is increasing to give them like,
Yeah.
well, maybe I'll
There's
stay
no
here.
work ethic. There's no work ethic. I just think that regardless of, you know, the economics of you know, Trump supports immigration. You have to add something to this country when you come here. You can't commit murder. You know, I can go on and on and on
You can
about
give
the
us a couple
deaths.
We got about 5 minutes left. You can give us a couple of bullet points if you want.
Yeah. Well, you know, I just think that it's really just so disgusting what's going on.
In a post 9/11 world, I'm concerned about terrorist infiltrators too. We should
Well,
know
it's
that.
huge, and you know, not to go back to MS-13. Do you know, like in Van Nuys in California, there's warnings for blacks not to stand at the bus stop after dark, because MS-13's murdering them. You know, this affects all lines.
come I didn't hear
A lot
about
of these deaths, it's in the news.
Yeah.
A lot of these deaths that are going on too are Hispanics at the hands of other Latinos who are here illegally. So this is not just like, you know, I'm a xenophobe or anything. It has nothing to do with it. I want you to come here. I want you to learn the language. I want you to have the work ethic. And unfortunately, like on Long Island, the only guys that contractors have been able to hire, like even in the late 90s, that actually would show up to work were illegal aliens. I wouldn't hire them, and I don't practice it. But, you know, a lot of guys were desperate
There's
for
plenty that
help.
have to. The small business guy is on the fence about that issue.
And a lot of them work really hard. You know, they take the trucks home, they open the yard at 3 in the morning, the guys don't have to worry. But it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right.
No, you know, we want these things to be fixed, but I don't know how you do it in one particular 3 or 4
I think you get rid of all the criminals first. Let's go.
So you have to vet them, right? And you have to vet them in a way that
I think the standards in the hearings have to be much harder to claim political asylum. Mexico's a political asylum
How do you
country.
investigate their lives when they come from, say,
Well,
Guatemala or
like
something
1,500 of these, like 156 of these 2,000 kids that are supposedly being, treated like cattle, which is BS. They're going to like the San Diego Zoo and stuff, and they're like going to places. It's not like conditions in a refugee camp in Europe with a Muslim migrant living in squalor and people getting murdered. These kids are safe, but 156, I believe, of them, had weren't really their parents who claimed their kids were they claimed their kids were theirs.
Or something like that.
Yeah, so, there's a lot of fraud going on. I think Trump's really the only one who's been addressing it. Bush tried it by adding 6,000 guard troops at the border, but he never finished the wall.
If you throw enough mud inside the wheels of any vehicle, you're going to slow it down. That's what's happening with the left perpetrating how much of a hoax they can create for the current president.
I think the left strategy is this. I deal with the media a lot, and I would tell you my observation is that, and I'm not Peter Jennings, and thank God, you know what I mean? I'm a business guy, and I'm just advocating for the average guy who's getting hammered, who doesn't have a voice, right? So I think that they keep the weight of the world on Trump. So the minute he slips up, he gets overrun like a tsunami. So it doesn't matter what the issue is. There's an issue of the week. If you take the verbiage that's used on every news show, it's the same across 95% of the shows. There's definitely collaboration that goes on. There's no doubt in my mind. And it's really sad. It's really sad. News 12's guilty of it. I'm very upset, and I wish they were more honest.
Well, I try to be one of the few conservative talk show hosts available to do the best that I can.
And
I don't even have training in this area, and I'm doing it.
The people that work at News 12 are wonderful, right? They're really nice and everything, but they don't get into the meat of the issues. It's all like hits. It's hit. Trump, screw Trump, screw Trump, screw Trump. It's never fair.
Search words.
I used to debate Richard Amper on News 12 27 years ago. It was the same thing. Carol Silver used to interview. He's head of the Pine Barrens Society. I helped write the Pine Barrens Act to protect Long Island's aquifer, but I was on the builder's side, and we were only asking for 8,000 out of 110,000 acres to build on. And Richard Amper, had News 12 in his pocket. He had Newsday in his pocket, the New York Times, and they never gave us a fair shake. Meanwhile, everybody wonders, well, you can't afford to live on Long Island. There's no affordable houses, because everything's preserved. So you have to be able to have sustainable development.
I've got a job for you in the last 2 minutes we're doing here. You guys, because I know you got to go do your Right 24 thing tonight. How would you, because this is my job, I'm not going to say convert, to explain what's happening in this current administration with the immigration issue, as you so well put it out. David, I cannot figure out a way to make it easy, and I don't seem to be able to get very far. Your platform, if you're constantly on a talk show host, you're going to get the opportunity. But do you think, is it working?
I think it is. I think more people are coming around to the issue. I think when people see the increases in their healthcare premiums next year, like mine from Oscar, which is going from $2,395 a month, $2,395 a month in premium, which is $29,000 a year. Just my premium alone next year will be $39,800. I think when those Cadillac tax plans health plans get taxed according to Obamacare, which the Republicans pushed off to 2019, 2020, I think more people are going to get it. I think more people are getting it now. I think Trump, with his tweets, does an end run and a Hail Mary right to the public, and that's why CNN's ratings are in the gutter.
It's the most exciting thing I've ever seen.
It really is. It really is. And people have to grow up and learn that he's salty and he's not always friendly.
What it does for me is it stops the too much penetration from all the people, the naysayers and all the people who are against him. It says this is what he says.
Well, he would be impeached already if Twitter didn't exist.
Well, I understand that there's a possibility, God forbid, he doesn't get elected again, but if he doesn't, they're going to go after him. They're going to go after him.
Twitter suppresses his numbers. I had James O'Keefe from Project Veritas on my show, who brought down Eggcorn by himself, and he's an investigative undercover reporter.
That's cool.
And he has proof that shadow banning takes place by Twitter.
That's great.
He has proof of it. So they're quieting conservatives. And Google, I think the biggest threat to this country coming up is the big search engines are going to shut down the freedom of the press.
That's a problem.
And the conservative voices will be silenced.
They've
but there'll
already
be an
been doing
underground.
that's not good. I mean, that's why I think a lot of these local channels are going out. Yeah, they're already doing it.
I couldn't get on illegal alien crime report on Google all day or Bing. They blocked it.
There you go.
It says data error.
David Zia, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate that.